A recognition decades in the making, Rockford sets the standard for reducing homelessness as far as 1,000 miles away.
A former Rockford mayor's visit to Concord, New Hampshire puts the Forest City back in the national spotlight. WIFR's Nathaniel Langley has more on this collaboration.
Homelessness is by no means solved in Rockford, but after 10 to 20 years of on-the-ground work, the city now serves as a roadmap for others.
You can't invent every wheel yourself, and so we need to find out what has worked for other communities.
Concord, New Hampshire's Committee to End Homelessness started 10 years ago, but the city's nearly 400 homeless people leaves Councilor Jim Sloucher wanting results.
We're trying to really move it from just sort of a monitoring frame, what's going on, to really an action frame.
His committee recently called former Rockford Mayor Larry Morrissey for strategies, a huge sign of respect for the Forest City.
Number one, use of the by name list. You have to know who your homeless population is.
To reduce veteran and long-term homelessness to essentially zero, those at Rockford Human Services left their desks.
You have to get out and meet people where they are, and you have to remember, most importantly, they're people.
Success doesn't bring a conclusion. Walker says there's still 12 people under the age of 24 without a roof over their heads in the city.
And to do that, we need units. We need understanding, we need support, we need buy-in, we need units.
Rockford drives ahead, paving the way as a role model to house those less fortunate.
And we've been lucky enough that we've been able to get feedback from them as well. So being able to share information, share what you have going on is really helpful.
But we have to create alternatives so that we can say yes to people, provide them housing options.
Besides that by-name list you heard there, Walker says the key to a functionally zero homeless population is to have more housing than people coming in.
Thank you, Nathaniel. And the city of Rockford likes to compare and contrast statistics with the city of Gulfport, Mississippi, calling it a friendly rivalry where another community enjoying success in reducing homelessness.